Hi everybody, it's Annette from The Art of Intuition. And today we are going to talk about pushing others forward and how we play that role and how we can use most of the time, a lot of the times. It also can trigger a lot of our victim energy when we play this role because the human consciousness is not used to pushing anyone forward. I don't even really want to play it as putting someone else over you because that's really not the energy we're talking about. We're talking about playing a role in a reality where it might even feel like you were inconsequential to the story when you look back at it, which seems weird because it's your story. And, we're writing the story, we're creating the reality, we're writing the book, we're writing the story, we're writing the screenplay, however you want to put it. But you're not the main focus. Or you felt like you left the reality and everyone else ended up better than you did. I'm trying to think of another way to put it. You left the reality and all of a sudden everything starts falling in place for everyone else who left the reality. They go on to all these other things. My friend used to say years ago, it's like, oh, you're like a muse. You meet people right before they go on and do something really amazing. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't feel like that's, it doesn't feel like that's, at the time, that rewarding. And it was just kind of a different way to look at it, a more human way to look at it. Because at that point, I wasn't really in my, it was probably in my awakening, but not really in my ascension. And the earlier parts of awakening where you really don't know that's what you're doing. You're just kind of not frustrated with everything in your human life, looking for other things. So the very beginning of awakening, beginning of the fourth dimension, I guess I could call it that too. So why do we do this? Why do we push others forward? Why do we play that role? Besides the victim energy. And that is a big part of it. So I don't want to downplay that too, because that is a big part of why we get in realities and we are either into stuff, introducing people to stuff that they're not into, whether it be, crystals and dars, Reiki, energy. It doesn't matter really where on the spectrum you are. It could just be the consciousness you're at, the vibration you're holding. You don't even have to have a tangible physical thing. You're maybe bringing it into someone's existence. It's just the presence, your own presence. But because normally the people you're interacting with in the reality are still operating in a human consciousness, they don't really appreciate the presence, right? They don't appreciate your presence. And it's not because they don't appreciate you. Because there's this disconnect in that. Like when we say our presence is so important, but it's not really acknowledged, right? And that's just because human consciousness doesn't acknowledge that. It's not going to acknowledge someone's presence as, oh my gosh, their presence is so nice. Because it doesn't read it on that level. Human consciousness is not going to connect it on that level. It's not meant to connect it on that level. It doesn't know how to connect it on that level. So what it will do is it more or less will appreciate you to a sense, but more of what you did, but not even really understand that, right? So it just can acknowledge that you were there. It is, and in a reality where you can look back on realities where people push you forward, but when you look back, it's more of an acknowledgement that they were there. They were participants in it. And they were there for a reason. And you have a greater appreciation for them later. But not so much because it's hindsight. It's because your frequency is different. You can understand how much they pushed you forward. And all the things you went on to do. And when we're on that side of it, we don't really see it. I will guarantee you that anyone that you had realities with and they went on to do something else, so you would look at and go, wow, they went on to do all these amazing things. And I kind of felt like I was still stuck in my ascension process, or still, maybe stuck's not the word, but still trudging through certain parts of it, because some parts of it, it does feel like we're trudging through. I was still going through my ascension process, or I still couldn't really participate in their realities because we were kind of on different frequencies. We were on different paths. So I couldn't really be part of their next phase. And they went on to do some pretty interesting things. And maybe from a human consciousness standpoint, we're going to judge it as, wow, they did some great things. But we don't even want to look at it as just the thing that was accomplished, or something that we might look at from our human consciousness and say, wow, that was exciting. Because that is one thing that kind of will get us, especially in the beginning when we can't really see our impact. We judge the thing as, oh wow, from a human consciousness, that was pretty cool what they went on to do. That was adventurous. They went on and did something different. And then a lot of the ascension, especially the earlier parts, we feel like we kind of get stuck for a while because we don't really know what we're supposed to do. So we can spend a lot of time kind of what feels like spinning our wheels, but we're just clearing our stuff, and we're clearing a lot of our stuff. And we don't really realize that's what we're doing in a lot of this process, especially in the beginning processes. So we will look at people and say, wow, look at all the things they went to do. But we're looking at it still on a pretty superficial level, and that's when all that victim energy comes up, right? Because we feel like we gave so much and they benefited and we didn't get anything out of it. That's normally what victim energy is, right? It's that imbalance. We feel that imbalance, that all of a sudden, oh, they got all this thing and I didn't get anything, right? But that's not true. We're looking at it on that human consciousness perception, that we're judging it on the physical thing they went to do, the physical thing they got, whether they went on and got a tremendous job that we like, wow, that's would be so valued in a human consciousness, or if they went on and moved, or they went to college. It doesn't really matter what it was. But what's important to remember is it's not inconsequential that you were there. Even if you felt like you kind of got left behind, that's another way we can feel in a lot of these realities, like, wow, they don't even remember what we did for them. Because in a sense, we don't really realize what we did. And even when we do, we can still feel that, oh, they didn't even appreciate what we did. They just went on to live out what would be maybe more of their human existence. Maybe they're going to go into their awakening. Maybe they were in their awakening and they just were still in that, you know? People can drag that out as long as they want to, in a sense, till a certain point, then you really can't anymore. But there are a lot of realities where that's the role we play. We're supposed to touch people. We're supposed to introduce them to different things. We do kind of play, I don't like the word muse, but we do kind of play that muse role, even if in the sense they don't realize that's what it is. You are activating their consciousness, which is something they might not see in that moment. I guarantee you they probably won't see it in that moment because they're not at a consciousness to even see that's getting activated. You might be activating a consciousness that doesn't come back into play for them before years down the road. And the reality they're now going to set up and go through could be a reality that now the vibration is a little different because they were in contact with you. Now they can go do that reality. Is it the highest of the highest reality? Is it still a human reality? Probably. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's more of an awakened reality, or they're starting their ascension. It doesn't really matter, but you are kind of the gateway to that. And to assist them to go forward. You know, just because you don't go through the door with them doesn't mean you might not help them prop the door open. You might not activate that consciousness that they might get in that reality, go through so many different other realities, and then that consciousness finally gets activated to the point where they can feel it. You know, because they start embodying it a little bit. They start to live from that consciousness. It's not just activated. But because we don't get the thank you. We don't get the boy, thank you so much for assisting me with that. Because we don't get that, we do have this feel that we were inconsequential to the story, inconsequential to them. You're not going to get the thank you. Because of the non-tangible of what we did. You're not going to get the human thank you, you know. But on a soul level, you understand the role you played. And you can even look back and flip it and look at how someone else played that in your life. And did you thank them? Like, really thank them? And most of the time we would say no. I mean, they were there and I could see what they did years later. It's like listening to any higher consciousness material. You might take a course you thought was really gonna, you know, push you forward, and I'm gonna take this course, I'm gonna maybe spend a lot of money on a certain course, and you take it and you don't see any big changes, you know, and that's a lot of the beginning of our ascension process. We do all this stuff, it's like, well, I'm waiting for it all to realign and I'm not seeing it. because it's getting activated, but it hasn't had enough time to work through your body. You haven't anchored it in yet. You haven't started living from the consciousness. You haven't had enough time for your external to align. So we kind of take it for granted, and there's a lot of things that will be taken for granted. And we will be taken for granted many, many times over. You will be taken for granted, and you kind of have to get used to that. Being that we talk a lot about, the hand behind the curtain is always us. The hand behind the curtain, we're the ones saying, go this way, don't go that way. Don't go down that road. That road is not the road you want to go down. Go down this road. This one's going to be better. It doesn't look better. Looks really shitty down the road, but trust me, that's the shortcut you want to go. You want to go the road less traveled, even though it looks like a lot of vines in the way. Get your hatchet out, because that's the way you got to go. That's going to get you there quicker. Because if you could only cut through the vines, you could almost see the other road on the other side, instead of going down the long golden yellow brick road, right? That has the gold bars as the street. That's the one our human ones go down. We're like, ooh, that's the one that looks like it's perfect. The other one might be like, a tenth of the walk. But because you can't even see it, it's so thick with all of our crap we got to get through to get there. We feel like, oh my God, I don't want to go down that road. That one looks awful. We will be taken for granted because we took others for granted. And some of it is that karmic payback, the karmic thing. Well, look at who you took for granted. Look how many people impacted you. And whether it be in your human consciousness or not, because even in our human consciousness, people push us forward. They had a frequency we weren't used to. Whether they knew that's what they were carrying or not, whether they knew that's what they were doing or not. The beautiful thing about Ascension and the 2012 gateway that came through is we became conscious of what the frequencies we were able to embody. We were able to embody more. We could bring them from unconscious to conscious. But it doesn't mean these things didn't happen in our human consciousness. There was just a lot of our crap in the way. We couldn't see it. People who were even giving off those frequencies, whether they couldn't hold them, they weren't living from them, but they still could touch them. And by touching them, and they might have activated them in us. So feeling inconsequential, feeling taken for granted, feeling left behind. And that's a big one for a lot of Ascension, because we get so far into watching everyone else. I don't even know if far into is the way I want to say that, but you just see everyone else continue their human existence. Because it's not their time yet, but you did have an impact. And I don't want you to underestimate the impact, just because you don't get a pat on the back for it. And that's kind of what our human is used to, right? Being recognized for what you did. Our human consciousness, that's how it kind of starts to tally up how we're doing, right? So when that gets removed, and you have to just be able to connect deep within yourself and go, okay, I played a role there. Did it feel inconsequential? Maybe to them, but there's no inconsequential. And I can't remember the movie that was in. Let me think. I might get it in a second. That was in Umbrella Academy, when Five said, no one is inconsequential. Everyone matters. There's nothing inconsequential in any of these realities. So don't ever paint it like that, because nobody is. Everyone's impacting everything. And if you think there's someone who doesn't matter, or you're not mattering, or these people don't matter, it's not correct. Everyone is participating in something. The question just becomes, what are you participating in? And what are you contributing to? You might continue to contribute to going through your ascension, clearing your stuff, and it might not look like it is that road that's got all the thick on it, and we're trying to cut through it and get to the other side, where someone else went down the yellow brick road after they met you, and they continue to go on down the road, and you're like, for fuck, maybe I should have grabbed a coattail and gone that way. And why didn't they want to grab a coattail and go the way I was going? It's just not their time yet. They haven't got the consciousness activation enough yet. They're going to go on and choose to do other things. And we have to be able to be okay with that. And there's a lot of ascension that basically once we can get completely resolved in that, everyone's going to go do their own thing. It gets a lot easier for us to recenter, reconnect with ourselves and understand that. And stop being victimized to our own journey, right? Because we chose to do this. We chose to be, kind of pushing it forward in a sense. And that might not be what someone else chose to do. Now, they might choose to do it 3 years from now. They might choose to do it 10 years from now. It doesn't mean they're not going to choose it. It just means for right now, they're not choosing it now. It was impactful. It did matter. They might not realize it. We might not realize it. And they might not realize it till decades later. You cannot get concerned with that and place a value on how you participate in the reality as a value of yourself in that reality. Just because it might not be valued right now. And it might be valued to the point where, because a human consciousness is not going to value any soul related anything. I mean, we didn't. We're in our human consciousness. We're just, it's not valued. It's not valued because it's not a tangible thing. The human consciousness, we have to be able to frame that as it's all about the external view. It's the external viewer rating that human's world, right? And that's what it is. And if it's rated highly, it's successful. If it's not, then a human consciousness in those realities, it's kind of a shunning in a sense. So when you're working, I kind of look at it like you're working on a different frequency. You're activating people on a different frequency, and just get into that role and stop trying to get the recognition of a human consciousness for the roles you're playing. And like I said, a lot of times we didn't even know. You can go back and look, and you might have loads of them, and go back and look and go, wow, look at all those people. You do impact people with your presence. They might not realize it. And like I said, most of the time they're not. They're not going to understand it, because they're also going to be looking for that physical thing. And they might feel the same way. Why won't they do what I want them to do? And we'll be saying, why won't them do what we want them to do? And they're like, well, why won't you do what I want you to do? Why don't you go down this road with me? You want me to go down that road with you? And it's just not going to work. That is kind of a lot of ascensionists. That's why a lot of the journey where, we got a little utility belt on with all our hatchets, because we're hacking it down on our own. And there's no one there to pass us what was that? We're all about, movies or shows. Jumanji, when the guy he carried the backpack. That was his whole job. It's like, I carry the backpack. What do you need? I got everything you need in this backpack. I'm not actually doing the work, but I got the backpack. In essentially, we got to carry our own backpack. We don't have a backpack guy. In human consciousness, we probably had a backpack guy. We had someone to carry all of our stuff in a sense. Sidekicks. Maybe that's the word. Which we would probably look at those people and go, oh, they were kind of inconsequential. No, they were carrying the stuff. They were carrying the stuff we might need when we needed something. They're carrying the water. Well, we're carrying our own water here. We can't farm out the water carrying like we do in our human consciousness, in our human realities, in a sense. We got to carry it ourselves. So, all right, I'm going to leave it at that. Keep practicing the art of intuition.